Hey everybody, welcome back to Copper Sun by Sharon Draper, and we are now still on Polly's perspective. We are on chapter 26, Facing Mr. Derby. Black baby, white mama, big trouble, Amari said with fear, tightening her voice as she carefully washed the child and wrapped her in the blanket. Polly's jumbled thoughts careened from how this could have happened. Rape, perhaps? To how Mr. Derby would react. Uncontrollable rage, to be sure. To how she felt about a proper white woman producing a black baby. Mild disgust at the very least. What should we do? Polly asked, almost panicking. Tell Mr. Derby? No, Amari cried, alarmed her voice. Get Teenie. Hurry, hurry. Polly rushed out of the room, praying she would not encounter Clay or Mr. Derby as she ran to the kitchen. Teenie! She screamed when she got there. Come quickly. We don't know what to do. Is the child born yet? Teenie asked as she ran with Polly back to the house. Yes, the baby is fine and healthy, Polly said, panting. It's a little girl. Do it look like Mrs. Derby? All pink and perfect. The child is not what anyone expected, Teenie. What you mean, child? Is Miss Isabelle ailing? No, she's sleeping. She doesn't know yet. No way. You ain't making sense, Polly. By that time, they had reached Miss Isabelle's room. Amari was sitting in a chair with the baby in her arms, cuddling close to her. Teenie stared at the baby in shock. Oh, Lord, 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 Teenie exclaimed as she sucked in her breath. It be Noah, she announced with finality. No wonder everybody be scarce as hen's teeth today. Noah, Polly thought. Noah, of course. It all makes sense now. But how could she? Why would she? Polly's stomach churned as she tried to figure out the magnitude of this problem. At that moment, Mrs. Derby opened her eyes. She looked around in fear. My baby, she asked desperately. You got a pretty little girl, Miss Isabelle, but you got a big problem, ma'am, Teenie told her with concern in her voice. May I see her? Amari placed the sleeping baby in her mother's arms. Mrs. Derby gazed down at the child, her eyes brimming with tears. My beautiful baby, she murmured over and over. Finally calmer, she looked up at Teenie and the girls. I must explain, she whispered, before I die. You ain't gonna die, Miss Isabelle, Teenie assured her. You was fit and fine. Everybody feels a little poorly after having a baby. Tenderly, Mrs. Derby touched the infant's velvety brown face. You don't understand. My husband would kill me, she said with certainty. He adore you, ma'am, Teenie said reasonably. Anybody look at him can see that. He ain't gonna hurt you. Mrs. Derby blinked back tears. Even though he married me for my money, I know he really has come to feel real affection for me. But I love Noah. I have for many years, and he loves me. But now Noah will die, and so will I. My husband's going to kill us both, and our baby. He would never do such a thing. But Teenie knew that Mr. Derby is probably quite capable of murder, and it would be within the limits of social acceptability to do so for this impropriety. Her mind was reeling. What to do? Amari asked in a whisper. What should we tell him, ma'am? Polly asked. Mrs. Derby pushed herself up in the sitting position. She suddenly looked aside. Tell him the baby died. Tell him it was a stillbirth. You must take my baby away to safety. Here, take her, she urged him. She lifted the baby up, but when Amari reached for the baby, Mrs. Derby drew the child to her chest once more. He gonna want to see the baby's body, ma'am, Teenie tried to reason. Tell him it was deformed, a monster. Tell him anything. Just keep my baby safe. She kissed her daughter gently and snuggled her closer. We best get you cleaned up before the master get back. He only went to the next plantation, Teenie declared. I got a bad feeling about this. We all gonna hang before nightfall, she muttered. Lord, 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 what we gonna do? We done fell out the trouble tree, hit every branch on the way down. Polly, Mari, and Teenie moved quickly to help Mrs. Derby get cleaned up and ready to face her husband. The baby nursed peacefully at her mother's breast, her cocoa brown skin a sharp contrast to Mrs. Derby's pinkness. Mrs. Derby patted the baby, held her close as she slept, and brushed away tears. Finally, she handed the infant to Amari. Protect her, she said simply. Amari blinked to keep away her own tears and took the baby with great seriousness. Polly watched as Amari held the perfect little infant close to her breast. We must go now, Mrs. Teenie said with quiet alarm. Mrs. Derby nodded with sad resignation as Polly, Amari, and Teenie left with the baby. As they crept down the steps, Teenie whispered to Amari, Sarah Jane just born the baby about 3 months ago. She got lots of milk. That's where we'll hide her for now. They tiptoed down the hall. Only Polly noticed Clay through a window as he approached the other side of the house. She signaled for Amari and Teenie to be still. He seemed to be looking in the other direction. She prayed he had just arrived back home and had not seen anything. When they heard him enter the back of the house, they exited quickly through the front. Tibbet! Teenie called as they reached the kitchen. The sleepy boy and his dog jumped up from the pallet that they shared near the fireplace. Take mine and Polly down to the quarters of Jubal and Sarah Jane's place, and don't ask no questions. The child looked at his mother's frightened face and seemed to realize this was no time for foolishness. Teenie told Polly, don't tell her nothing, except that this baby's mama is dead and she gotta nurse it. Of course, don't take no genius to figure out whose baby this be. Lord, what a mess. Hurry. Amari and Polly dashed out after Tibbet, Amari clutching the child close to her. Baby be safe with Sarah Jane? She asked Polly. We have no choice. The baby's life is at stake, Polly replied, trying to sound hopeful. Sarah Jane's large, loving arms took the baby girl with no questions. Oh, she'll be fine, child, Sarah Jane said to Mark. Sarah Jane will keep this little one safe. Now y'all get on back to the kitchen. Tonight be full of danger. Polly shivered as they hurried to Teenie's kitchen. Will this work? As soon as they got back, Teenie told her, get on up to the house and see to Miss Isabelle, Polly. Amari, you stay here with me. I still got supper to fix. She began pulling down pots noisily, mumbling, maybe praying to herself, Polly figured. She hurried off to the main house. Polly had just made sure that Mrs. Derby's hair was brushed and that she had on a fresh dressing gown when Mr. Derby returned. Polly heard him rush up the stairs. She braced herself. He burst into the room where he found his wife fast asleep. Polly, sitting in the chair next to her, pretended to be weeping. Her heart thudded in her chest. She prayed she could convince him. Where's the baby? Mr. Derby demanded. He looked around in confusion. Polly, eyes full of honest fear, told him sadly, The baby was stillborn, sir. I'm so sorry. But your wife is fine, she added. What? He took a few steps back. It died. He raked his fingers through his hair. His face seemed to crumple. Was it a boy or a girl? He asked, barely able to choke out the words. A girl, sir. I want to see it. I want to see my baby. His voice broke. You don't want to do that, sir, Polly said, stammering a little. The child was not normal. It is better to bury it quickly. Anguish ripped Mr. Derby's face. Don't try to tell me what I want to do. Bring me the baby and my daughter. He blinked furiously, but Polly could see the tears in his eyes. She didn't know what to do. At that moment, his wife's eyes fluttered open. She looked around, confused for a moment. When she saw her husband, she said with a sob, The baby never took a breath, Percival. I'm so sorry. Are you all right, my darling? Mr. Derby asked her gently as he leaned over her. She reached up and touched his face. I'm fine. Did you see a daughter? He asked. Mrs. Derby hesitated. Yes, I did. She was deformed. She took a deep breath and closed her eyes. Polly was impressed with how effective she was. Mr. Derby narrowed his eyes. Something doesn't make sense here, he said suspiciously. He paced the room and looked at Polly sharply. I prayed every day for this baby, Mrs. Derby whispered. That much Polly knew was very true. I could not have fathered an imperfect child, Mrs. Derby declared. He seemed agitated. I must see it, if nothing else, to say goodbye. Mrs. Derby spoke up frantically. I instructed the servants to wrap her and bury her away, far away from our home. Nonsense! Our daughter, regardless of any infirmity, must be buried with honor in our family plot, he told her. How dare you discard my child like that? He scolded, anger and sorrow lacing his words. Polly found herself feeling sorry for the man. I'm so sorry, Percival, Mrs. Derby whispered again. Please do not bring her to my presence again. Just thinking of her is more than I can bear. Polly thought she looked more terrified than sorrowful. He leaned over and kissed his wife on her forehead. I share your grief, my dear, he said to her. You just rest for now, and I will take care of these unpleasant details. As he was leaving the room, he said to Polly, Bring me the body of my daughter. When the doctor gets here with Noah, he will want to examine her. Polly curtsied, and he slammed the door behind him. Mrs. Derby whispered to Polly, Is my baby safe? Yes, ma'am, Polly replied. For now, but when the doctor gets here, we have to show him something. Perhaps the doctor can be delayed, Mrs. Derby suggested. Can you get word to Noah before they return? I'm not sure, ma'am. Will you be all right for a while? I must check with Teenie and see what can be done. Yes, of course,
Please go and do what you must. You moved beyond kindness to help us. I shall forever be grateful.
Polly hurried down the stairs and out to the kitchen, desperate to avert a tragedy.
How has it come to this? She thought.
She realized then how deeply her life was entangled with those of the slaves she had once so despised. So just like that, within the blink of an eye, their fortunes, which were already not great, turned for the worse. And now Mr. Derby, because of his arrogance and ego, because in his mind there's no way he could have fathered a baby that had any type of problems with it, any type of deformities or issues. Like in his mind, his ego is like, no, there's no way that can happen. So because of that, this entire plan could be undone, which was a hastily made plan anyway. So now they're in a mad dash to try to stall the doctors and try to keep Mr. Derby in the dark of what really happened. So, all right, we're finishing up this chapter, and we'll be head to the next one soon. Thanks for reading with us. See you on the next one.